Good evening. It is Thursday, March 28th, 2024. This is the North Andover Board of Health. I officially call this meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on our agenda this evening is the approval of the meeting minutes from January 25th, 2024.
So I reviewed the minutes, no edits needed, so I make a motion to approve the January 25th minutes.
And I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Moving on to old business, we have departmental discussion.
I'm going to pass this off or ask you to table this until the end. We
Okay.
can do that at the end and have our main event
Sure.
first and foremost.
Okay, then we move on to our Healthy Communities Tobacco Control update. Sure, come on up.
Introduce yourself. You have the mic. I have a mute button somewhere over here.
All right, thank you. Ron Beauregard, Healthy Communities Tobacco Control Program, your tobacco control officer for the town, as well as with 16 other communities in the collaborative. Well, one of the things that Brian and I have been talking about is what other communities in the area have done to reduce the density of tobacco product sales permit holders. There are several studies that have been provided to me by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health's epidemiology team that show a correlation between reduced density and lower tobacco use and initiation. Now, it's important for me to state that they haven't yet determined a causation between the two, but the correlation shows at least a promising route to getting lower, or at least appears to show a promising route to lower tobacco use. It reminds me of a little bit when years ago, you might recall, before the state prohibited tobacco sales at pharmacies, or at that time healthcare facilities, but predominantly pharmacies. The criticism of it was that by removing it from those establishments, you just would shift the sale to perhaps the next door convenience store and the like. And that was a legitimate rebuke of that policy. Many communities, and I can't recall if North Andover may have not gone that route. I can't recall. I know you were ahead of times with the flavor restriction. I always know that North Andover was one of the first, I think, 6 to start that movement until the state finally removed flavored tobacco. So it reminds me of that pharmacy one only because there was just a belief that removing it from the shelves of a healthcare facility would kind of tarnish the image of a tobacco product. The idea was that if I was a tobacco representative, I can't think of a better shine I could put on my product than having it adjacent, or at least under the same roof as drugs that cure you. In fact, I remember being at a North Reading public hearing many years ago where students came to participate, not invited by us, but it was a sort of a boards of health in the town just sort of encouraging young people to be there. And it's kind of neat to see their reaction to that, meaning one of the students, I'll never forget, got up and said, well, why, because we had sales at some of the pharmacies, so one of the students got up and said, well, why can't they just sell the cigarettes right at the pharmacy, because it's a controlled substance or controlled drug or whatever, by being age. And a lot of people clapped, but they said there'd be some incongruency by the idea of I need my heart medication and can I grab a pack of whatever, right? So it would be a little, but it was kind of an amusing thing. So this one here, the one thing about these, Andover, your neighbor Andover has this, what they call attrition clause. Now, no one is suggesting, just for the sake of fairness, to remove, to eliminate any place's permit if they're selling their establishment. So while they don't literally transfer the permit, it's a new permit, the buyer has an opportunity, it's usually within 30 to 60 days, to get their own. So it wouldn't devalue the business that would be selling. But what I do suggest as something for you to consider is, again, Andover, Westford, Bill Ricca, I have him on here, but there's several in our coalition, and I could put together a municipal list that's produced by the Mass Municipal Association that will show all the communities that do this. It's not the majority of towns, but I think it's something DPH is seeing as something we maybe should focus on. And I think, like the pharmacy, what it does is, first of all, you don't get a big pushback from existing retailers because, if anything, I suppose it strengthens their position in that market. And it could be regarded as a win-win. What it does do is just perhaps have fewer places for signs to go up, and we can talk a little bit about signs, but every tobacco product sales permit holder usually has agreements with, or most of them do, with the suppliers. So just fewer points of sale. I have some language. Sorry, Brian, I don't know if I sent it to you or not, but I can
No,
just
it's okay.
pass it. I can just quickly, it's just a paragraph here. What it would say. Now, I think in North Andover, Tony sent me the number. I should know it already. What is it, 13, 12,
17.
17? Oh, okay.
But
15.
one is closed.
We got 15, I think.
Read the list right there.
I think it's
Although
15.
some are duplicates,
I redid the list, I have
duplicate people with different ones.
Yeah, different locations.
one that closed and then one that opened, so.
Okay.
It's
So it looks like
technically
60.
Oh, it's technically 16.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I'm missing one, I don't know. Well, it's funny, I glanced at this and is there a new establishment?
Yeah, let me get you the list I did today.
Well, that's fine. In any event, whatever the number is, Haverhill's, sorry, that's what happens when you're working with some communities. Andover's regulations indicate that, and this is the language, no permit renewal will be denied based on the requirements of this subsection, except any permit holder who has failed to renew his or her permit, thank you, within 30 days of expiration will be treated as a first-time applicant. So applicants who purchase a business that holds a current tobacco product sales permit at the time of the sale of said business may apply within 60 days of such sale for the permit held by the seller if the buyer intends to sell tobacco products. Now, there's a line here that's been recommended by the Mass Association of Health Boards, which is all fines and suspensions of the seller, if any had been imposed, must be satisfied prior to the sale. This is a sentence that's just meant to, I'm sure it's quite rare. I've seen it only once, I believe, I know once, where it's a somewhat, I guess we call sham sale. So, if somebody's has several thousands of dollars due in fines, and then they just sell, but it's kind of maybe perhaps not
They sell it to themselves.
something, yeah. It's just a guard against it, and it's just a good practice, to just say, look, it's, you do, as the buyer, you buy the debts, I guess, if you will, of the seller. And then a permit is not owned by the entity exercising it, and so it may not be sold, pledged, or otherwise traded. We know that. So again, the incidents where it would occur is if a business went out of business, your permit holder number would go down by 1. And if your permit holder sold to another, to a seller that didn't obtain a tobacco product sales permit, it would go down by that point. So we've had a couple, it's worked. And again, finalizing, I guess my view of it is the appeal does remind me of the pharmacy ban, in that you just reduce the number of doors where you can enter. It's to make tobacco what we would all hope for. I think many of us would hope for a more drastic change, but it's harmful business-wise, and it hurts people's livelihood. So we've been sensitive to that. But it does, it brings us just a little closer to envisioning a system where tobacco shouldn't be synonymous with convenience. So that's
So we
that.
have 16, and our regulations say there should be no more than 16. So
Correct.
our most.
We do have a cap. We don't
Right,
have the
so we're
attrition.
capped right now. So the
Yes,
attrition,
yep.
and when they're doing the attrition, are they changing the cap? Like, are they changing that language as
So
well?
what would happen if, say, Quick Pick closed, or pick a store, if they
Right.
closed and another business moved in and it wasn't a convenience store, it wasn't a retail store, and it was an insurance agency.
Yeah.
That permit would then expire,
Okay.
and we wouldn't issue another one to that location, and that number would come off of our total cap. So 16 would go down to 15.
So we would
Yep.
keep going
Yes.
down potentially.
So approximately how many towns have done this already, Ron?
I
Just
think we'd have to
ballpark.
change it. Yeah.
5, 10, 20?
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to change it each time.
Yeah, I feel bad. I should have typed that, gotten that muni list. I know Westford has it. North Reading's working on it. Andover has it. Billerica has it. But I can get that to you. If I had a
I was
ballpark, if I had a
curious.
ballpark it in the
Yeah.
state, I'd say somewhere like 20 to 40 communities have done this.
So it's definitely gaining traction, and it is a way to reduce the density of tobacco sales.
So if somebody else buys it and keeps it as a convenience store,
They
it stays
have
the same.
60 days to apply for that permit.
But if it becomes
that
an insurance,
location.
But if
Yeah.
they
Yep.
wait 75 and we have that new reg, there's no, they'd have to wait for somebody else to.
They would have to come to the board and get a variance for 60 days. Is that right? They would have to get a waiver from that?
You mean if they didn't do that in time?
If they didn't do it
missed.
within 60 days?
Yeah, I always think of things like that. I mean, meaning, the language, yeah, reasonableness would have to come into play.
Okay.
We're not trying to,
Right.
the
that would
the
wanna-
objective is not
oh,
to.
61 days, sorry, no.
But
Yeah,
historically,
yeah,
I'm guessing
exactly.
most people act on that pretty quickly because.
I would
if-
think so.
If
I
they're
mean,
going into that
If you're buying a
business,
bar, you
right.
want to make sure
You
the
would think
liquor
they'd be
license.
well
Right,
apprised
right.
of
Yes.
where they make their money, so to
Exactly.
speak.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I definitely like the attrition clause. We had a total of 16. We could do one out of the 16 adult-only tobacco store.
Yes.
We did not know, there was one that came in that was going to apply. They never did. They never got up and running. They left town. Somebody else came in and got it.
Right, and that's the 17th technically?
No, that's the 16th.
It is, okay,
Yeah.
so it's,
So the number 16 was reserved for a tobacco-only, adult-only retail store, but we don't have one. But this is one regulation change you could consider. Are there other things, Ron, that you would look to incorporate? Additional regulation changes and updates?
Well,
It's been a while since we've done
it
this.
has been a while. Now, what we just did in Andover is I could put together a set of regulations integrating everything you have in here, but removing anything that's inconsistent with state law. And I do recommend that as well. I'm glad you mentioned that, Brian. The fining structure is so much different with the state now. There are certain provisions in your regulations that still would be, follow your 300. I think yours is all 300, right?
Yeah.
So your fine structure would, for instance, selling minimum pricing of cigars would be a local fine. Of course, selling a flavored tobacco product or selling to underage, that would be a $1,000 fine. So there's a way to integrate that. Trying to think, it all depends, there are some, there's some technical changes that can be made. The state law really is one of the most stringent in the country. California and Massachusetts have the most stringent
Yeah.
tobacco laws. So it's more providing consistency. There's always ideas for, there's technical things I thought they were more pertinent back. I don't think they're necessary, but this, for instance, flavored tobacco can't be sold. And that's what the language in the state law and your law has to say. There's a provision you can put in to say mere possession of it is also equates to a sale. Now, this came into play when originally, folks might be taking things off the shelves when the law went into effect, but it was in the back room, and perhaps a few unscrupulous, folks would sell them anyway. But in general, I feel as if the product now, at this point, it's been since 2020 that the law went into effect. And there's really no need for any flavored tobacco to be on the premises, and it would be regarded as offered for sale. It's been over 4 years, so. And there are some other technical things that can be changed. But I could put that set of regulations together for you so you have a nice, I think the most important thing is when you do give a set of regulations to the retailers, that they have something that is consistent with and not contrary and not confusing to them.
Okay.
Makes sense.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to talk about too is the Newbury Town Council opinion regarding the Board of Health.
Yes.
Changing the fines. I read the stuff that was sent around on that. If you want to give the board an update as to what
Yes.
the situation was.
Yeah, this is a very interesting issue. In a nutshell, what happened is, all the boards, when they have let me back up a little. Since I've been enforcing the new state law, it's a big adjustment for me. It's adjustment because we've moved from $100 and $200 and $300 fines to $1,000. For me, whenever you have that authority to issue such a large fine for a first offense, it weighs on you. When we passed the law, when the state passed the law, I was fortunate enough to receive, as I think all of the other programs, extra funding from the state. The only thing I wanted to do with those funds is to hire seasoned inspectors and communities to educate. I have about 350 retailers, and for me to go out there, it's been still a crazy ride, because the most stressful sign for me to see in front of a business, and they're quite common, is help wanted. And I know that because I'll go to a place, or one of my inspectors would have gone to a place, and 2 months later, the staff changed, or several, people selling the tobacco. So all that training you did, you train the owners, but the idea was for me to do my very best. So I worked hard to let the state know. I think I was somewhat one of the late ones to do enforcement. I just felt I built such a relationship with the convenience store owners and staff, and that's the way I like to operate. And we had this little thing called COVID going on back then too, so I just thought it made sense to make sure we're all set. So fast forward, it's been about 1.5 years plus that I've been enforcing, and it's nothing I'm proud of, but I mean, like $56,000 I've issued in fines, and it's just 56 violations, and it's just roughly 5% sales rate, which everyone pats me in the back or whatever, and that's a great job. But it doesn't feel like a great job to me every time I issue it, and I think the way you spin statistics, which we can do, is if I told you instead of saying we had a 95% compliance rate and only 5% failed, if I told you every time we go out on a compliance check, every 20th store on average we get a sale. Doesn't sound so great, but that's 5%. But my goal is, they know on the state level, is I want the 1s and the 2s and the 3%. I want it to be such a rare occurrence. I've got plenty of ideas floating in my head. Some of them have been kind of scoffed at a bit. One would be to have a mandatory scanner. I know it has some problems, in terms of relations with customers and such, but I see a lot of advantage in that, taking the heat off many of the clerks who part-time and sometimes not staying long.
Have they seen, since it went up to, was 5% pretty much the same
good
number
question.
you had when it
Well,
was
Yeah.
Not $1,000?
I've been negligent in not going back to my old stats. I want to go back to them because I would like to know if 10 times the amount, like yours is different, 300, but in most of the communities was 100. So whether a tenfold increase meant a tenfold
Right.
reduction. I don't think so, because most people don't want to be here where I'm seated for an appeal, or that sort of
Had
thing.
one of those recently.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just not a comfortable thing for them, so. I know that the problem, I think what goes through my, I mean, having done this over 20 years, it's an act of negligence. It really is. It's oversight. Sometimes it's even an act where people are trying to be nice. When I say nice, it's just not to be, when they're kind of like, they think the person looks older, and that's why they went to the ID all standard. So, I mean, I have to try to balance between, building that relationship, but at the same time, it might be that person that you're handing out that fine. It's the business, I guess,
Yeah.
Brian. It's,
So the Newbury Board of
so,
Health.
okay, so the Newbury Board of Health.
Just like
So
what we
that's the
ran into
backdrop.
with One of our.
So we get
retailers.
appeals. Now, out of the 56-ish I've done, fined, I would say no more than a dozen have appealed. I think we're really strong in that because of the communication, and there's no question that we don't get a pushback that a sale occurred. We, of course, go in, I go in right after the sale. I do it discreetly. And it's just all done there. It's my time to face the music and theirs as well. But it's right there at the time it occurred. So we don't get that question. So I shouldn't say usually, all of the appeals of those, let's just say a dozen, there was never a dispute of the sale. The reason why people went is they wanted to, get some modification of their fine. This isn't alien to us as citizens. I always say, people who, I know friends and family, it's tough to admit, but, they get speeding tickets. And, I know them. And they all, they've done this, they've dared to do this thing, and they go to the clerk magistrate and they appeal their ticket. But there's one thing I know about every single one of them they have in common. They were all speeding, okay? So they're going because they're thinking what everyone thinks of usually is not the $100 fine or whatever, but they're thinking of the 6 years of pain and suffering for the surcharge. So I've never taken it personally, even though we have a very low appeals rate. It's not a personal thing to me. So the question is can boards of health do that? It's modifying. And there's a provision in the section of the 105 CMR 665, which is the state law, that essentially says that after a hearing, the board shall either sustain, modify, or withdraw the order. We've talked about this in our advisory board meetings. It brings up a lot of sort of uncomfortable conversation. There's two different things. Whether you have the authority to do it, and then the second question would be if you have the authority to do it, should you do it? And I think that second one is just as an important question as the first, because you've gone through this as board members. You're worried about setting precedent. If you carve it out for one person, then what's a mitigating factor? What's an aggravating factor? Why? And then it's going to look bad if there was someone that's been in town longer. The whole thing. So this issue in Newbury was whether or not you just have the discretion at all. And we've been always telling all of the boards of health that according to all of the major legal minds and guidance that we receive from the Mass Association of Health Boards, Mass Health Officers Association, and the Mass Municipal Association, that the only thing up for debate or purpose of a hearing for appeal is whether a sale occurred. If that's proven, then the imposition of the $1,000 fine must occur. But Newbury's not alone, but others have suggested, don't we have this authority? So they looked at that language and they looked at modification, and they thought it in its plain meaning it would be to make it less. You know, they have a judgment to make it less.
That's what we thought.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so there was an opinion that was issued, and then that opinion, then within not many days after that opinion was altered to say that there can be some modification, but not in the fine. At least that's how I read it.
Okay.
So this is actually a point that we're still trying to resolve. We've continued that appeal in Newbury,
Okay.
and going to just try to kind of button it up a little bit and just know for sure and what footing we're on in that regard.
Yeah.
But, you know, if they do, and I think, I mean, obviously it has a big impact on me in a way because we want consistency,
Mhm.
but we're all still sort of a little reasonably, you know, trying to get used to the idea of that fine level for a first offense, so.
So basically, it's either $1,000 or you withdraw the order, meaning there was no sale, which
Most of these.
that's
are
the
not.
that's the only option. Which I definitely feel bad for the retailers and for the clerks that may have to get
Right.
saddled with that if that's their store policy, like what we faced last time. But it seemed pretty clear that you can't change $1,000.
I mean, I feel
Cut
like
and dry.
we were offering if they wanted to pay it over, if it was a hardship, like, okay, and then that seemed to be a,
Well,
That
that's
kind
been
of,
done.
Yeah.
With the whole other.
Yeah.
I thought we could substitute suspension and
Right.
lesser
that's
fine.
right, we
Yeah,
were
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
play
Work with them on that,
Right, you're
but
right.
Apparently not, that's not the case, which I
Okay.
just found out 2 weeks ago.
We'll see. I mean, that, what you just mentioned, I mean, is that what they meant by a modification? Like, we've had cases where we've given someone like 10 months, you know, $100 a month, and sometimes paid monthly, and other times just,
Right.
there it is, 10 months, you know, pay it then. Yeah, it helps someone that's is that a modification? I don't know. I used to know what
I don't know
word,
either.
I used to know what words meant. I don't
Feels
know
like
anymore. I
removing
give up.
modification
Yeah,
is
after
the,
reading
is the
this-
way to do it,
after reading
right?
the
Just
stuff
get
that came
rid of
around.
that word.
Yeah, reading the stuff that came around, I was like, okay,
Right.
let's get some clarification on this.
You know, and then I'm sure, I mean, I should know this, but I'm sure most laws and most regulations have severability clauses, so when there's an inconsistency between two provisions, then you can nix one. One
Mhm.
overcomes the other.
Yeah.
So maybe that's it, you know, maybe that language was put in there as a, I dare say boilerplate or something, and then now it just doesn't square with, doesn't square. I wish I knew, by the way, these are legal questions, so, I mean, I know as a general rule, this idea that the state creates the floor but not the ceiling, the strength. I mean, I dare say I think a local community could go stronger, you know.
Yeah.
So I think it has something to do with that, and I know it has something to do with the chapter of the law that deals with, there's a state law in addition to the local regs that say it shall be $1,000.
Yep.
Chapter 270, section 6, I think it is. So, any event, we shall see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
What's the second? Oh, you mean for a second offense?
Yes.
Yeah, within 36 months, it's $2,000, and then within a third offense, within that 36-month period, it's $5,000, with suspensions on those two, 7 and 30 days. For those two offenses. It doesn't go away for 3 years, so once you have an offense, it does kind of hang with you for a while.
I think that anybody coming to us now for, anybody who had an offense probably should know ahead of time that the board doesn't have the power. The only thing that we're now able to argue is whether it happened or not. So
That's
if-
Right.
That's a good point, too, because the
Save the
language.
time.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the language in the, the correction order that I send essentially says if you are aggrieved by this order, not something we usually use in everyday speak, but it does say that. And generally, I think that we've had some of the hearings where people come and they learn this standard that it's only if you dispute the sale, and then they kind of, sadly say, well, why am I here? Why
Right.
did I do this? Yeah.
You actually draw
So I
more
think-
Because
attention
everyone,
to it.
everyone kind of, the board members say
Yeah.
we
Right.
feel bad, and,
I think when they tell us they're going to appeal, I will have a conversation with them and tell them, this is what you're appealing, this is what the
Yeah.
board can and
Right.
can't do. You can do whatever
You
you
still
want,
want to.
but these
Yeah.
are the parameters.
I will say this, even though it makes things a little uncomfortable to be dealing with this, because it is, in the end, I think it'll help us all. Like, in other words, we'll know.
Absolutely.
You'll have this opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
We also
Right.
had one that came just to apologize. Do you remember?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yep, I
Yes.
remember that
Yes.
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And then-
one thing I want to talk about next is the Brookline regulation that was
Yes.
just appealed and upheld. I don't know all the ins and outs of this. I'm hoping you do, because I want to kind of dive into it a little bit and
Yeah.
get your take on it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the Brookline, I am not well versed in it. It's not
Okay.
a policy right now that I've been involved with, but some communities have. But the gist of it is this: it's a nicotine-free generation, I believe it's called.
Yep.
Okay, and the way it works is you set, which Brookline did, and of course it was challenged, and they won at the Supreme Judicial Court level. So, in fact, the Supreme Judicial Court took the case before it even went to the Intermediate Appellate Court. They said, this looks like an interesting issue. What can local communities, whether it be their bylaws or through Board of Health regulations, do? And the gist of the opinion said that
You
communities
gotta tell them what it
should-
is. I don't know what it is yet.
I don't know.
That's what?
Tell them what the regulation was.
Oh, yeah,
I remember
okay.
that, sorry.
Well, I'm letting the drum roll.
I
No,
vaguely
just-
remember
I-
hearing something like
Okay.
this.
Okay,
I
so
didn't-
I love
Certain
with-
date of birth.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's one certain date of birth.
Yeah.
Anyone that, and so they set that certain date of birth, who's 21 now,
Okay.
and anyone that's born before that, I'm sorry, after that date, will not be able to, you can't sell tobacco products to them. With the vision that essentially, as,
Over time.
may I say, attrition among those who smoke, there will be no more sales. And you're gonna pack up your bags and or not sell that product. Look,
So anybody under a certain birth date.
yeah, it's just a
set
set
point in
date. You've got to
time.
be, yeah,
So like this year, so
yes.
in 20 years I can't buy cigarettes, or
No, it would be anyone, so if someone was born in
2003?
2000. Oh, I'm sorry, 2003. Yeah, exactly. That's it. You just set the date.
I know, right?
You just set that date. So if you were, when it's enacted, when the law is enacted, to me what's easier, and again, sometimes the birthday makes it sound confusing.
Yeah.
Whoever's 21 on that date, you're in. You can buy.
Else is out.
If you didn't turn 21 by that date, you're out.
You can never buy.
Ever.
You can never buy in that community. So
Yeah.
that's the straightforward way
Yeah.
to put it. So, look,
And they upheld that? So,
yes.
Yes.
when you said they ruled with who?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Brookline.
They ruled-
Brookline.
Brookline,
Okay.
town of
Yeah.
Brookline,
So
yes.
they passed this regulation. Obviously, it was appealed, and it skipped the appellate and went right to the Supreme
Yep, yes.
Court in Massachusetts, and they upheld it and said the Board of Health has the authority to pass reasonable regulations. This is reasonable regulations considering all the health effects of tobacco. So it was totally upheld, which I was shocked because we talked about it at the MHOA quarterly meeting several months ago, and it was before the last hearing, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to stand up or not. Does the local Board of Health have the ability to literally ban a product for people under a certain age? Like forever.
Yeah, no matter your age.
You would
know, it
think
doesn't-
these 16.
I was going to say, technically, that, well, but,
Right?
I mean, technically, we
You're
are
sorta in that
banning
route.
further, I mean, technically,
Yeah.
we have the power to ban because we're saying, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, you're at 17.
Right.
Can't
If
be
we
And
banned.
if
keep
you keep
doing it,
scaling
yeah.
it down, you're gonna get to the same
Yeah.
price
Right.
effectively.
The argument for the other side, which, it was definitely not thought to be a slam dunk. in
No,
this
not at
case
all. Oh my God.
It's a
I
really
thought
big
there would've
thing.
been a lot of
The argument on the other side was what they tried to argue, I believe, there's probably other reasons, but one of the ones was the biggest is the state law said if you've got to be the age of 21 that's the standard, 21. You can't, you could go perhaps higher than that for the age, but you couldn't eliminate the age. They said 21. So, you know what, it ends up being, I think, a question usually they have in these laws. They're called, what's it called? It's when it I don't know why I'm forgetting my thought, but it's a clause that basically says nothing shall be inconsistent with the state law. And with the question, they argue this is inconsistent because you said you could be a certain age, and now you're basically saying it doesn't matter what age you are, you can't buy it. It's early on, so, you know, kind of on the hot seat a little bit on it now, which is fine. I'd like to learn more about it. I think obviously any board that would like to entertain it, I'm able to get information about it. The court ruling mentioned that the boards of health are laboratories of innovation. I think is something to that effect, that you're a laboratory.
Cool.
And,
There you go.
yeah, you are a laboratory.
Teachers me with that.
Right. So, you know, you have that opportunity to try to think big things. I mean, we had a board, I know it's off topic, but we had a board chair in one of my other communities, and she said that I think it would be a great idea if at every retailer's shelving, that there be a local regulation that said you have to have at least 50% of your shelving for smoking cessation.
I've thought of that, like, why isn't there a regulation, why there's, like, next to the cigarettes, there's not nicotine products to help with, or the phone number for the 1-800-QUIT-NOW or something like that.
We do put up the phone
Yeah.
number, but
Yeah.
for the actual sales, that would be a drastic thing. It's controlling what a business person is going to have up on their shelves. But I think, and this is several years ago, probably like 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I remember we were running a little bit of a, treading a little bit of a line there in regards to First Amendment clause things. I mean, First Amendment, of course, lets people put, we can put warnings on signs, which we'll talk a little bit about, on packages. You can't just say anything about a product, and that's a proper ingredient list and all that. But when it comes to saying what you can put on your shelves, there could be the argument of, hey, look, I don't have to sell that product. Why are you forcing me to? You make me give speech to say this is a good thing to do. I'd still like to do it. I still think that while this enforcement is the key, is important, I still think I'd like to find new ways to make every time someone goes to get a tobacco product a choice. And by the way, I didn't mention, I would love to see those products subsidized heavily by the state, so that when someone goes to that counter every day, whenever they go, they have a choice between the $14 pack of cigarettes or the 20-something thing of pods, what have you, or the $5
I was going to say, or
supply.
the free.
Or free, whatever
Yeah.
like, free. They're spending the taxes on it are very heavy
Right.
now, on all of it.
There's no grants available for, like, at least towns to get some of these products. Like, we can offer it for our town residents to be able to get it free of charge.
I haven't seen anything, but
I could look a little more into, there isn't that 800 quit now, and
Right.
I do know I'm
Do they still
gonna
give?
write, I should know this, and I'm not positive, because I don't
You
want
have
to
to
state
participate
something
in
publicly, but
Three
The wrong
coaching
phone number?
sessions and then you
I
get it
think,
free.
no, it's the right number.
okay.
100, yeah.
I think it's 3 counseling sessions, and then you can get the products for free. Oh, up to a certain amount.
Okay. So anyway, so on that nicotine, yeah, you're going to have the two arguments. One is, is a ban, or at least a partial ban, is part of the solution, or is it not? And I don't think our epidemiological team has done anything on this, but I hate to go back to the pharmacy issue, but it might be one of those. You're obviously going to have, border issues, where people are going to flock. But I will give credit to those who think of innovative, I mean, flavor was an innovative thing when they did it. It was, the idea of having an apple or a wine flavored cigar was just a common thing, cherry or what have you. And now it's not. It's probably for the better, because you were one of the first, again, that said, that isn't going to be the norm. But yeah, you let me know if there's an interest in it. On my boards, it's not a secret that this came out, and I know that there'll start to be there are other towns looking at this and passing it.
I definitely like
And
more
that-
information on it.
Yeah. Do we know how many years, like, did they say like effective 20, like, did they give like a 5-year warning or something
No.
like that for the retailers?
You mean like the date, like that you're
Yeah.
21?
Right, like is it now, like
Usually it's a
people
now thing.
not
I know the
like-
Brookline one
Okay.
was.
Yeah, I think it was January 1st of this coming year or something,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was
like,
fairly quick. But yeah, I'd like more information on that to just explore it.
Okay.
I don't know if I want to pull the trigger yet. I don't know what the sentiment would be with you guys or the public, but I think as a pulmonologist, you're probably like, yay.
No, I actually am not yay
Okay.
on it. I think I would probably sooner talk about the attrition with because
Yes.
it's a balance between, free market and where is the role of individual choice, whether it's a right choice or a
Libertarian
wrong choice.
Yep.
I'm with you on that.
So
Yeah. So it's one of those, it's a very interesting topic.
it is a very interesting topic. I saw that, and I forgot about it, and then, talking about it now. It's just, and I mean, yes, I'm speaking as a pulmonologist, but, also, I mean, people are entitled to make their own bad decisions, and I think that there's a certain role we play, but I don't know, I would probably vote against it if that was the
Okay.
case.
I'm a lot more interested in the solution around having information and access to
Like
address
grants, like trying to find
cessation.
grants
Right. Help
to
people
to
who
help
want to
people as
quit.
opposed to
Right.
like other bans that we have in this town that we've made our opinions known about. But it like being able to help people as opposed to just passing more regulations. But I think I would more be in favor of
The
the
attrition part of it?
attrition part of it. But
Just kind of working off the riffing off of what you're saying, is there a way, so we talk about every time it renews, you reset the clock, maybe with every reset of the clock, if someone wants to get the new license, now that there's an economic argument, does that impact the business value, but that they would have to then also be willing with the new license to do some of the things that you were talking about before, about having a kiosk or some kind of opportunity to provide smoking cessation products.
it does feel like the
That's-
process could be modernized. I
yeah,
agree
that's
with
a
that.
good point. Because
definitely.
I think Stop and Shop has a lot of them have that when you buy, well, not Stop and Shop because it's now the separate liquor area, but a lot of the places that if you buy liquor, you insert it into
Right.
the reader. I mean, that's not a bad, really, that's a good idea to just try to just help businesses in general as opposed to
I agree.
putting more regulations down.
And don't most of these places sell liquor too?
A lot of them do, yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of a twofer if you're trying to put some kind of equipment that could both monitor alcohol sales and tobacco sales.
Yeah. Okay.
I also think on building off of that, there's gotta be grants out there that can help, that we can point towards to the small businesses to, or offer, that we can help set them up for these, reading machines for.
Get funding to help get the machines.
Yeah,
Right.
I could look into that.
It's in the community's best interest.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Who monitors alcohol sales?
The alcohol commission,
Because I wonder if there's something there to try to do joint.
ABCC, that's not.
No.
Town clerk does a licensing, but they don't inspect or anything like that for that. That's all state.
but is there something that you could tie the
Well,
software?
that's what I'm wondering. Could the state try to like, could we, I know we can't influence state policy easily.
You can try.
But it seems like it would make sense if you've got two bodies of organizations who have regulations around age, and if there is the technology out there, why aren't we working together? And you're right, especially with real IDs and all this stuff coming out that are standardized, it seems like a good time to.
Yeah, definitely. All right. The last thing I wanted to touch upon was the signage.
The signage, yeah.
So, I got a call from the building department. A new store opened up, they were selling tobacco, and they had, their windows were just plastered. Almost completely covered, you couldn't even see in, with like tobacco stuff. So, he asked me, is there like a limit as to how many and how big? So I talked to Ron about it, and he said there's a federal law that requires every tobacco sign has to have a certain general warnings on the top of the sign that covers at least 20% of the sign, the certain general warnings. Only one we found had it.
I was just saying, this one has one at the
Looks
bottom,
like that
but
one has
it's
it too.
tiny.
It's
That
size might
doesn't
be
look
the
like
issue.
20% of the.
Yeah,
sign.
this is
Correct.
definitely not 20.
This
Yeah.
one, this
size
one
is-
maybe.
That one is the only
That one
one that
maybe.
is.
This one, definitely
Well,
not.
look at this
Yeah.
one, I can't even read
Oh,
what it
yeah.
says.
So we've been working on this for 6 months at this point.
This one at
These are
least
pictures.
isn't
These
in
pictures are from last fall.
Yeah.
It's been a long,
It doesn't say
long
Surgeon General.
journey, but it's a federal law that we don't think we have jurisdiction to enforce, but we can enlighten them to this potential federal violation. Because the FDA does do spot checks, but the distributors get these and they give them to the retailers. The retailers just put
Yeah,
them out.
I'm
They
sure
have
they
no
don't
idea.
even, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's not even a conscious
Yeah,
thought.
but
when we
it was a
look at
very unique position that we found ourselves in, saying, oh my God, none of these are compliant with the federal law, but we don't enforce federal law. So Ron's been researching it and talking to different legal entities about it and MAHB, and we finally made some headway, correct?
Yes.
So,
And I found that, like, I should have prepared before this, but I found it. There's a language in your local regulations in section 4, 4.2, that says each applicant for a tobacco permit is required to sign a statement declaring that the applicant has read the regulations and that the applicant is responsible for instructing any and all employees who will be responsible for tobacco product sales regarding federal, state, and local laws regarding the sale of tobacco in this regulation. I'm starting there because we don't have authority ourselves, we don't believe, to issue fines or any other suspensions and the like for having these signs up. However, there's an acknowledgement in the regulations that all permit holders have to be familiar with federal law. And there is a federal law that governs cigarette advertisements. You know, the one thing I just thought of, Brian, is whether this citation I'm going to mention, this federal citation, applies to anything but cigarettes. That's because everything here says cigarette
And
advertising.
does it also have sales? Because I could see promotion being a whole different this is, I like our regulation is specific to tobacco product sales. If there's also a federal regulation about tobacco product marketing or sales, not sales,
Yeah.
promotion.
Promotion,
That could
yeah.
be argued to be
Yeah.
two different things.
so it's one of these really
Yeah,
I'm going to
weird
find
positions
that
we found
out.
ourselves in,
Right.
like, what do we do?
right.
How do we do it? What do we do?
So the code, there's a Federal Cigarette Labeling and Advertising Act, and the thing I'm just going to mention to you, which I think Brian gave you, encapsulated it, what the parameters are for cigarette advertisements, and it's also in 21 Code of Federal Regulations 1141.10, and I'm going to check if these citations apply to other tobacco products such as Zyn,
Chewing
nicotine
tobacco,
pouches,
yeah.
cigars, vape, that sort of thing. I gotta find that out. And I'm
Yeah.
sometimes just,
Oh,
you're the first community that's called upon me to do this. So it says for print advertisements, it goes through all the different types. The required warning must appear directly on the advertisement. Additionally, the warnings must comprise at least 20% of the area of the advertisement in a conspicuous and prominent format and location at the top of each advertisement
At the top.
within the trim area,
Yeah.
if any.
One, so there's that one. Did you say at the top or trim?
It says it must appear prominently, must comprise at least 20% of the area of the advertisement in a conspicuous and prominent format and location at the top of each advertisement within the trim area, if any.
Within the trim.
Yeah. So,
So that's directly violating.
yeah, those,
All of
it's
them
not
except-
close. Yeah,
Yeah.
except for this
The
one,
pouches.
if that law, the other ones are all cigarettes, right?
Yeah,
And
because
the
the
other
other
ones
ones all say Surgeon General. This one just says warning. The one that says warning, this product contains
But
nicotine.
the product is all cigarettes, besides the one that complies, right?
Right.
Cigarettes?
Correct.
Okay.
3 different
So,
brands.
so here's the idea, in a nutshell. The local law says that the retailers are responsible for understanding federal law in addition to state and local. Now, that's just openly, it's a burden. It's a responsibility, but it's a burden. Let's face it, even folks doing the tobacco control work are still trying to push through some of these regulations, federal, state, and local. So, we try to highlight the most important ones, which this is not one of them when we, send statements out and that sort of thing to them. So this one here, we educate them, because it's not them, I think I heard you discussing, it's not them saying, yeah, put that up, I could care less, with the sizes. It's those folks that advertise the product. So they're just gonna have to be, they're available. Again, that one product shows that you can do it the right way, but it's annoying if you're selling it, to put it up like that. So, what we would do, or what we suggest I would do, is when I go in to do an inspection in a North Andover retailer store, and perhaps others, if others want me to do this, is to have just a simple sheet to explain why I'm pointing this out, why it is violative of federal law, and there's a reporting process for if you see it, and it's really meant for the general public to report, and they report to the FDA. There's a special division within the FDA. Now, it's not that isn't what we want. I think most retailers, in fact, all retailers that I know, I'm not just saying this to try to be kind to them. I think they all do want to comply with the law, and they don't realize this is going afray.
Yeah, they get it from their distributor.
They don't.
Here's a sign, put
Let's
it up.
see.
Sure.
What you
that's
have to
great.
believe is they're actually responsible for doing all this marketing and copying. I don't think they
No.
do any of it.
Yeah, no, they get it for free, they put it up.
It's just,
Thank you very much.
It's basically kind of swag packages.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah, exactly.
Here's some collateral, put it up.
Yep.
And they just put
All
it up.
right.
and if there's pushback, or they get pushback from their end, from whoever supplies it, let's talk about it. But
Yeah.
maybe we're wrong, maybe, and again, it's important for me to not just run into it. I should find out if it does apply to other products, because, vaping products are advertised as well, cigars,
I know,
just
I don't
cigarettes.
love the price of that one either. Like, if
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like huge and it's like, you can see it everywhere around town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you can get products
Yeah.
for $3.50.
So we'll keep looking into this.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens with it. Do you want to start working on a regulation update and just a general
Yes.
overview and overhaul of what we have to match state law,
Yeah.
match the fines, nutrition clause, and anything else you guys think of between now and the next meeting, email me. I'll talk to Ron, we'll incorporate additional stuff you guys think would be appropriate in there. And we'll start the long drawn out process of updating regulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
I'm used to, this is usually something, I don't know, involving septic or
why I had
animals or.
I know it feels like
I
an
don't-
esoteric conversation, but it's a good conversation.
Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Ron. I appreciate
you very
your
much.
time.
Thank
for
you.
As
joining
always.
us.
Thanks, appreciate
And
it.
we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to keep my update extremely brief.
Okay.
Carolyn's on maternity leave. She'll be back in a couple months. You've been busy. living the dream, running the show. The grants are going along fantastically right now. Annette is on her honeymoon in Southeast Asia. She'll be back next week, finally, she's another 3 weeks. AED update. So we get the AEDs, we ordered them, we received them, we got the weatherproof boxes, we got the signage, the materials for the stands and the structures will be in tomorrow. Those are going to be built. So let's see, materials are delivered tomorrow. We're going to assemble a prototype. We're going to meet and approve the prototype next week. They're going to install the pedestals the week of the 3rd through the 10th. They're going to install the building mounted boxes the 2nd through the 12th on the building ones. Install the AEDs on the 15th. And then we're looking to do probably some sort of brief opening ceremony or some sort of press release or something. I have no idea. The company that sold us the AEDs offered like a ribbon cutting or something. Just they want advertisement and publicity. I think it's a good thing for the town to advertise as well.
I agree.
So a couple weeks behind schedule, but we're at the beginning of the seasons for all the outdoor sports: baseball, soccer, lacrosse, field hockey. We're ready to go. So it's been a long, drawn-out process, but we're finally there. Right, Tony?
Yep.
And she's been great doing all the paperwork and all the POs and all the admin stuff for it. I will keep you guys posted on anything that we do in terms of the select board wants to show up and get their picture taken, and you guys can come to the Board of Health because we sponsor
Can you do it
did
at
all the
Carter
work.
Field? I'll just walk over.
Yeah, I can probably do that. Hey, it's a nice field, so
Baseball, lacrosse,
And I think
soccer, all
I think
three
I
are
mentioned
there.
it
if it's in
before.
the morning, bring coffee.
I'm a coach and very involved with NASA, so if you need
Yes,
any
that's right.
interference in that direction, let me know.
Yes, I think
I'd be
the-
happy to.
The company is going to give us a training video on these.
Okay.
That we're going to get out to all the sports leagues to
That's
get
great.
all the coaches and all the referees and everybody, so they can at least see it and know what it is and how to do it. Because you go and you basically call 911, you give them a code, they give you a number, you punch it in, you can open it up. So you can't just go and open it without calling the police first. So you call 911, you get it, you administer the AED, and the ambulance is already on its way.
Great. Are they like shatterproof headlocks?
Yes, yeah, they're outdoor, weatherproof, they're meant for this particular
That's
use.
great.
So yeah, so those will be done hopefully in 2 weeks.
That's exciting.
We're shooting for the first, but it was tough getting all the POs and everything lined up for the contractors and getting their quotes, and it took a while there. They're busy. They're flat out busy doing their construction jobs and everything, so a little project like this, they're like, yeah, we'll get to it eventually. But yeah, so that's,
Have we coordinated with Brooke? Does Brooks have on all their fields?
I don't know. I do not coordinate with Brooks.
I mean, I know that they're not our fields, but I'm just
Right.
curious if there's an opportunity to say those, just because
I-
we have local people who use those fields.
Yes,
so
a
it
lot.
would be great if they,
Yeah.
they
I-
chimed in to be
I-
like, you
that's a
guys
good
are the
thought.
only ones now in the town without these on fields.
I believe the health office does have an AED over there,
They do.
and they'll hop on a golf cart and go if needed. Would be my guess, but I can look into that. And that's it.
That's great. Anybody have any other discussion or items to bring up this
Nope.
evening? No?
The hospital's nice and quiet.
No, they're never quiet.
That's not a word you're
There's no
supposed to
COVID,
use.
well, minimal COVID, but
Yeah,
yeah, I wish it was quiet.
I know.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I second that motion.
Okay, we will adjourn this evening. Thank you very much.